Lots of crazy news came from Russia last week, but the biggest one, and the most important one, in my opinion, Russian President Vladimir Putin lying publicly in front of the entire world. I'd like to address that stuff. Howdy, everyone. My name is Konstantin. Welcome to Inside Russia, where usual Russia is explained by the unusual Russian. Welcome to Fridays. I give you crazy news updates straight out of the mad circus that Russia has unfortunately become. But first things first, there is no such absurdity that cannot be realized in Russia these days. Please remember that. And the news? I call them crazy news from Russia. The news of Russia that matter and that you will not find in any mainstream media, or at least you will not find some of the news that I report. And of course, some, the biggest ones, are reported in the mainstream media. I'd like to start with the good news. I always start with positive news. It's nice. It's a rule. The good news set good mood for the entire live stream, for the entire report. And there are plenty of good news in Russia these days. It's not all doom and gloom, far from it. For example, life of pigeons has just become safer. Starting September 1st, Russian drivers face a fine of 600 rubles, a little under $10, for hitting a pigeon while driving. In some cases, the fines can be much more severe. If a driver hits a pigeon and leaves the scene of the accident, then he or she can formally be charged for leaving the scene of the accident. And that's a serious offense in Russia driving code. For this, a driver faces revocation of driver's license for a period up to year and a half. No more, that's pretty tough. Year and a half. And also, a driver for leaving place of accident, the scene of accident, faces an arrest for up to 15 days. But if a driver hits a flock of birds, of pigeons, and does it intentionally, I haven't seen anyone hitting a flock of pigeons intentionally. That's gonna do a lot of damage to the car, by the way. But, Russian rules, Russian code of law says that if a driver does that intentionally, then it'll be considered a criminal offense. And for cruelty to animals, punishment is from 3 to 5 years in prison. Well, folks, I think it's good news. It's a win-win, win-win-win, really. The win for pigeons, their lives is much safer now. It's the win for the Russian state. More fines means more money to support the war in Ukraine. And the win for the drivers, too. It is another reason to give up driving in Russia. It's become too expensive. The cars cost so much, and it's mostly Chinese cars on sale right now, which are, pardon my French, or Russian crap. There are shortages of gasoline reported all over the country. And now, on top of everything, prison time for hitting a flock of pigeons. All win. The state, the pigeons, and the drivers. And by the way, other birds are out of luck. Motorists can hit them in any numbers, anytime. This law only works for pigeons. Why pigeons? I think there was a little bit of hard liquor involved when the lawmakers were drafting this new law. Well, not a little, but much, a lot of liquor. And that's the only reasonable explanation I could come up with about this pigeon hitting and running law. The next piece of news is also positive. Do you know that some people say that life in Russia is wonderful, despite what some crazy gloom and doomers like Konstantin inside Russia, for example, say? You know, life is great. Russians are having a good time. The Russians are having a good life now. There are so many reports about that. In YouTube, coming from Russia, from outside Russia, Well, they say go and see how Muscovites live in Moscow. And you know what? I must say yes to that. Some Russians are having indeed time of their lives. For example, former chairman of the government of Karacháyevo-Cherkessia province, Vladimir Kayshev, this guy right here. He was arrested and charged with corruption. The judge ordered to confiscate Kayshev's properties worth cool 41.94 billion rubles. That's more than $500 million. The list of seized properties included luxury cars, shares in different businesses, different land plots, residential and non-residential real estate in Stavropol province, in Moscow, and in Moscow region. Anyone tell me that guy with so much money wasn't having a good life in Moscow? I think he was having a fantastic, wonderful life. Now, who is this guy? A big shot on Moscow, perhaps? No! A small potatoes politician in a tiny Russian province. Do you know how many people live in Karacháyevo-Cherkessia? 500,000. The largest city? 110,000 people. Kayshev was the chairman of the government of the province for a little under 2 years. And he could steal $500 million. That's what they just found. And I'm sure that most of the money and assets Kayshev keeps overseas, in the south of France, in Florida, in Dubai, in London. Now, he wasn't even the biggest boss in the province. Imagine how much money his boss was stealing and accumulated. And imagine how much those were stealing who in the Kremlin appointed both Kayshev and his boss. And don't forget that there are 85 provinces in Russia. Use your imagination. Imagine how much is stolen from the taxpayers in Russia every single year. So the good news is some Russians are financially stable in this extremely desperate, depressing economic times in Russia. Some Russians are actually having a good time and wonderful life. Huh? How about that for the good news? And another piece of news is positive. But this time, it's really positive. No sarcasm, okay? I want you to check this out. One more time. This isn't Russia. Just a hint. This is Japan. This is Japanese magnetic levitation train, goes at speed of 300 miles, 311 miles, and 500 kilometers per hour. Now, watch it again. This is incredible. Safe travel at such speed, and this is the crown of engineering of human beings. The Japanese don't talk much how they are great, how they are the best engineers. They simply silently do things. And this is such a striking difference between Russians. They talk so much how they have the best values, the Russian world is superior to everything else, how Russia is the most advanced country and things like that, but they have nothing to show for it. Nothing! Nothing! The Maglev project the Japanese are working on right now, and it's not done, it's in the process of constructing. It'll link Tokyo and Osaka, the distance of 286 kilometers. And most of the trucks will be laid underground in tunnels. That's a lot of work digging. Very expensive. The project cost? Around 55 billion US dollars. Now, something to compare with. This is Timur Ivanov, the former deputy of Russia's Minister of Defense. Ivanov was in charge of all construction projects in Russian armed forces. He was arrested in 2024 and charged with theft, corruption, and embezzlement. He was recently sentenced to 13 years in prison and to $1.3 million fine. It is rumored that at the moment when Timur Ivanov was arrested, he was worth around $60 billion. That's supposedly how much he stole. Imagine how Russia could shine if it, like all taxpayers' money, would be spent honestly, invested into development of different industries, invested into construction, into infrastructure. Imagine how much money Russia has if just one crook out of thousands crooks in Putin's Russia has about $60 billion in his pockets, worth that's enough to build a Maglev train project. Imagine possibilities Russia had. Unbelievable. Well, let's talk about poor Russians a little bit. We're talking about rich Russians this, rich Russians that. No. Let's talk about regular people, poor people. Some good news for Russian poor as well. The leader of the Communist Party, Sergei Malenkovich, proposed to oblige rich Russians share their houses and apartments with poor families with children. What? That's how I felt when I read the news for the first time. What? This is absurd. It's got to be fake. Well, you know what? It's not fake. It's not a fake news in a fake country. This is the proof. It is Lenta.ru. It is an official premier facade of Russian propaganda. The headline for you. I quote Sergei Malenkovich. We would suggest that if a citizen buys an apartment above a certain square footage, he should, as part of a social tax, invest the funds in the purchase of apartment for needy families or allocate some of the rooms in his penthouse as social rent. This measure would help resolve social tensions related to income inequality in the country. We plan to propose a draft of this law to Russian parliament. End quote. What's the excessive area he's talking about? What's the excessive square footage? Well, it's 300 square meters or 3,000 square feet for a real estate, for a house or an apartment, regardless how many people live there. So whoever builds or buys a property over 3,000 square feet would be obliged to share their house or apartment with an unknown family as a process of social rent, according to this proposed law. Oh boy, I have heard that music before. I heard it long time ago. Who is this guy, Sergei Malinkovich? Let's check it out. A communist, of course. Who else can propose something so atrocious? Bravo! Bravo, Sergei! Bravo! You just proved once more that commies are not good. This fella uses a typical commie method to steal from the rich. And that was exactly what they did back in 1917 after the Bolshevik Revolution. And they want to do that again. They don't want to grow Russian economy, so everybody will have a chance to earn enough to own a house, to buy an apartment. No! They just want to steal from the rich. It's hard to believe it's 2025, right? It's more like 1917 in Russia. Well, this is Putin's Russia for you. Before moving to the next news, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being part of Inside Russia community. Thank you for your messages, liking, commenting. Thank you for praying along with me, and thank you for your love. Thank you for buying me coffees at buymeacoffee.com, for Patreon, for PayPal. Your support shows that you value my work highly. Just know that it inspires me and gives me energy to move forward. Regardless of my demonetization by Google for my stand against Russian government, against the war, I promise you I will not stop. I will continue telling you the truth. I will go live every single day for as long as I can. Thank you, friends. Now, the next news comes from Russia's largest real estate developer. Samolyot. In Russian, it's plane. I mentioned the company before. It's a group of companies, Samolyot. I mentioned this group of companies before. It is trouble. Tens of thousands of overstocked real estate, apartments mostly, they can't sell them, and record high debt. I also mentioned a couple weeks ago that Igor Kenin, Samolyot shareholder, biggest shareholder, died 2 weeks ago. This guy right here. Nothing unusual, a 56-year-old billionaire, a healthy fanatic, I should say. Yeah. The guy who cared so much about his health, the guy who exercised a lot, the guy who, what can I say, was crazy about his health. Healthy lifestyle, perfect health, perfect. And well, he died. Just like that. Imagine that. Why? No one knows. No one is talking about it. Silence. From his family, from the company, from the authorities, from the investigators. Of course, it's as if he never lived. Must be heart failure. Almost all billionaires in Russia die of heart failure when they're flying down, falling from the windows of their houses or apartments. In the process, when they flying down, they die of heart failure. I talked about it in a daily snippet in Patreon account of Inside Russia. There I share daily news from Russia that I find significant, and this is one of the hottest topics to watch this fall and this winter. bankruptcies of developers, big and small real estate developers. I will be monitoring the industry and covering it in weekly economic reviews that I do every Wednesday. You see, real estate is one of the foundations of any economy, and what's happening in the real estate kind of gives us an understanding how much people have, how much they spend, what's going on with the credit market, and so forth. So, very important. And this week, I just want you to show the quality of construction of one of company's projects, a brick apartment block built by Samolyot. Check this out. I don't know. What do you think? Are there any builders out there? Please let me know in the comments what you think of that. Oops. So, let me know in the comments. I think it's pretty lousy job, but what do I know? I only built power plants. I tell you what, if we were laying bricks, we never laid bricks, we poured cement. But if we were laying bricks like that, and that's Samolyot construction project with huge holes, I think we'd be crucified. Now, next, interesting news comes from Samara province of Russia. There, the state officials will be requiring, the top official, the governor, will be requiring his lower level officials, pretty much everyone else, to undergo a lie detector test. The polygraph system testing has been launched already, as announced by the governor Vyacheslav Fedorishev. And according to the deputy governor Nikita Zubko, the polygraph will be used to check applicants for employment, for state, jobs, or at certain circumstances, for example, at request of the governor. He emphasized that the light detecting testing will be systematic. However, in 2024, when the government only planned to introduce such tests, the governor then said that the tests would be strictly voluntarily. No one is interested in personal life, only in work. It's voluntarily, there is no obligations, said Fedorishev last year. What a short memory he has, Perhaps not. Perhaps it just proves once more that Russian governors are masters of their words. They can give their words and they can take their words back. Masters of the words. Systematic lie detector testing as a part of the job. That's Putin's Russia 2025. It's just another phase. There are plenty. Well, another news is very sad, sarcasm aside, and I'm not being sarcastic. Moscow court, one of Moscow courts in Balashikha, sentenced a 63-year-old pastor to 4 years in prison. The pastor was found guilty of calling for activities directed against the security of the state on the internet. That's official charge. The reason was pastor's anti-war sermon published in September 2022. This guy was trying to open eyes of regular Russian people on the war, on what was going on. He was trying to tell them that even if someone is given a summoned and mobilized to go to war by order, and someone kills a person, that's a mortal sin. And then he was telling people not to do that. He got 4 years in prison for that. I don't know how to comment this news. I would like to say a short prayer. Dear Lord, please help this man. Send your angels to help him in prison and help his loved ones, please. Amen. By the way, there will be more news like that coming out of Russia, and they come out now every single day. And if you want to keep up with other breaking news, become patron of Inside Russia, because every single day I carefully select and post 9 news that I find important with my commentaries and analysis. It'll keep you informed on everything you wanted to know of Russia but didn't know where to look. Now you know. Consider becoming patron at patreon.com and get full access to the news that matter. I'll put the link to sign up down below in the comments and in the description. And by the way, if you become patron, you also help me run this channel. Thank you so much. Now, the next piece of news is also sad. Very emotional, probably the most emotional piece of news in this entire week. Anyway, judge for yourself. A monument to Felix Dzerzhinsky was unveiled in Vladivostok. That's the east of Russia, the Pacific part of Russia. Felix Dzerzhinsky was one of the founder of the KGB, Russia's secret police, the secret police of the Soviet Union, to be precise. He was responsible for mass murders of Russians during the Civil War in 1918, 1919, and 1920. According to various estimates, different parts of the KGB, it was called ЧК back then, under Dzerzhinsky's leadership, executed somewhere from 50,000 to 140,000 people, innocent people. Denis Simonov, the head of the local KGB headquarters, called Dzerzhinsky and this is the ceremony right here. He called Dzerzhinsky an inimitable example for all generations of security officers. He said that at the opening ceremony of the monument. And this is it. This is the new statue honoring Felix Dzerzhinsky. In Russia, he was nicknamed the Iron Felix. Unbelievable. I'm sure that there are some of you watching right now who lived under the control of the USSR in the Eastern Europe. You remember the name well, and you also remember the KGB. One of the greatest moments for me when the USSR was collapsing was knocking down the Felix Dzerzhinsky monument at Lubyanka Square. This is it. I want to show. This is the old monument. This is grand. You see, tall, solid, strong, and right behind it, right here, the yellow building, sand looking like building, is the KGB headquarters. It's both building to the left and to the right. So Lubyanka is right behind Felix, monument to Felix, the Iron Felix. And this is what happened. Right after the coup, people gathered right next to the KGB building, and they started knocking the Felix down. And I want you to hear the cheering. People were absolutely happy to do that. This moment I remember, and I'm sure that a lot of people still remember this moment. And if you lived in, East Germany, Poland, Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia, Czechia, Slovakia, if you lived in Hungary, if you lived in Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, Bulgaria, Romania, you remember that moment, I'm pretty sure, because to you, just as for me, to me, that was a symbol of a new life, that something bad ended and something good started, okay? This moment right here, when they knocked the Iron Felix down. There was a joyous celebration. I'm looking at this moment, and I remember that moment, and I have very fond memories of that. Right there, it was our triumph. Triumph. The old country no more, oppression no more, never again. Listen to those people cheering. Listen, look at their faces, how happy they were. That was happiness coming from inside. That was the most sincere thing you could imagine. Look at them. Look very carefully, because it was a very different country back then. That was Russia. That was Russia that I knew and Russia that I loved. And now, the Felix is back. First, they put the monuments, as you see, it's inside the KGB headquarters in a backyard, so no one sees, but it's the fact. You cannot take the words out of a song. This is Felix. He's honored again. And this is quite a turn from that moment of celebration when not just those people at Lubyanka Square right next to the Kremlin in Moscow, it was all of us. I was in Rostov-on-Don, but I was watching live. I was 16 years old, 15 years old, and I was cheering as much as those people who were at the site. And now I see that the monuments to Dzerzhinsky going up again, and the monuments to Stalin going up again. What the hell happened to the country? And I wonder what happened to people. The next piece of news, I don't even know how to describe it. I don't know which category it falls to. I want you to just listen to this. There's not much to see, but there's plenty to listen. That's the sound of the new country. See, the old country, that was the old country right then. That was the country knocking down Felix. That was the country where thousands of people gathered and they were doing something that I'm still proud of today, 35 years later. That's the old country. And this is the sound of the new country. That was Russia. This country is, I don't know how to call it. It doesn't have a name. This actually happened 2 hours ago. In Rostov-on-Don, in the city where I was born and I grew up, the air raid siren was alarming the residents of Rostov, right in the center of the city. And that's the sound of the increased safety and security that Putin promised Russians when he ordered to invade Ukraine. Yeah, air raid siren. I just wonder, what do people in Rostov do when they hear this siren, when they hear this very unsettling sound? Because there aren't any bomb shelters. I mean, what do they have to do? Where do they have to run? There's no one to run. Well, the next piece of news is actually funny, for a change. Would you like to see an unlucky Russian ship? Here it is. Now, let me give you a little heads up. In Irkutsk, that's near the Lake Baikal, okay, that's east of Russia, they built a cruise ship for cruise tours of famous Lake Baikal. And this is what happened when they were putting the ship, commencing the ship. Now look, this is champagne. Boom. It didn't break. And it didn't break for the second time. It just fell and started bouncing. And that's a bad sign. Then there's a balloon blew up as the ship was lowered into water. Look at that. Boom. And this is how it looked very close. No one was injured, fortunately. And this is not it. This is the tugboat was helping this ship. And look what happened to the ship and the tugboat. They collided. Oh my gosh. Well, all of that before the first passenger even stepped on board. That was the only medium-sized cruise ship, lake cruise ship built in Russia in the last 2 years. They just don't build them. And you know what? The ones they actually built, the one they built, is not a very lucky one. Perhaps they should give up this activity of shipbuilding altogether. Another piece of news, well, not so funny, you know. Okay, but if I were Russian, I'd be very upset. Now, this is what I saw in the recent news. First, I'd like to give you the headline, headline. I'm sorry. Ugh, too much talking. 80,000 foreigners applied for free education in Russia. They went through a huge competition and passed all the exams. Well, good for them. 80,000 foreign students started studying at Russian universities September 1st. That's a good thing, right? Well, except for they're studying at the expense of Russian taxpayers. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, really, except for Russian government is pressuring both Russian young men and women and universities to cut on education, higher education, because they need more workers and soldiers, and they don't need educated people. 2,400,000 Russian students are paying for their higher education. And Putin just invited 80,000 foreigners, mostly from India, Africa, and China, and paid for their education. Well, I guess India, Africa, and China come first, and Russia comes second, and that's inside of Russia. Nice. Well, the next piece of news is ironically satiric. Satirically ironic, perhaps. After invading Ukraine, Russia was kicked out of the most of international communities, including some, kicked out of some cultural events. It was kicked out of the European song contest called Eurovision, which Russians loved, by the way. Well, Putin decided to organize own song contest called the Intervision. And it's about to take place, and the organizers of the Intervision couldn't sell any tickets. Now, they started giving tickets out for free, and they couldn't give out any tickets. No one was taking them. And this is what they came up with. They started advertising. Early to bed, early to rise, work like hell, and advertise. They announced an urgent recruitment of extras for the Eurovision content. The participants are forbidden to come in yellow and blue colors. That's the colors of Ukraine. The announcement of the recruitment of extra actors appeared in some publications as advertising. According to the ads, 6,000 rubles, or about $100, will be paid for 2 work days, $50 a day. It was separately noted that there are a lot of vacancies and actors are urgently needed. The organizers also invited viewers of different nationalities to, kind of sell everyone that, it's all foreign nationals from different countries came. Yeah, they just need different looking actors. The advertisement states that people from 18 to 55 years old can participate, including 14-year-olds accompanied by adults. In the requirements, the organizers separately noted the style of clothing: casual, light t-shirts, shirts, wide jackets, trousers, or decent jeans, but not torn. Bright yellow and blue tones are forbidden. It's very ironic, They can't even give tickets for free. No one wants them. That just tells you how things are inside Russia, how things are going when Russia is isolated and is cooking in its own, space. Okay, before I jump to the last news, and this news about Vladimir Putin, this is the footage from Ryazan. It just came in a couple hours ago. I want you to see that. It's a city close to Moscow. It's a big city, Ryazan. It's the capital of the province. There's a big fire in the south of the city after yet another Ukrainian drone strike. And guess what? There's a large oil refinery in the south of Ryazan. It's called Ryazansky NPZ, and it is happening as I speak. The drone strikes on Russian oil refinery infrastructure continue. They're being executed right now in real time. And it means one thing for Russia: more shortages of gasoline at pumps and higher prices for Russian gas. Okay, before we move to the last news, I would like to ask you a favor. Please let me know what do you think of this news selection, and let me know down below in the comments. Pick 3 news you like the most and let me know. Perhaps you didn't like something, also let me know. It's very valuable for me to have feedback from you. It allows me to make future reports more accurate and more interesting. Thank you so much. And the last piece of news is about Vladimir Putin. As you might have heard, he's been in public a lot this past week. First, he visited China, the Shanghai Security Organization Summit, a 3-day event. Then he went back to Russia, but he stopped in Vladivostok in the east of Russia, and he's attending the Eastern Economic Forum right now. He's spoken publicly a lot, and I would like to address some of his speeches and statements. First, the press conference in Tianjin, the results of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. Here's the short summary of Putin's speech at the press conference. I don't want to give you the entire speech. The detail is a very long one. Let me just give you the summary. I quote Putin. The results of the summit in China are very positive. The long visit allowed me to discuss all the topics with Xi Jinping in an informal setting. The contours of the multipolar world have already taken shape. The Chinese initiative on global governance is very timely. We exchanged a few words with President of Azerbaijan Aliyev. There are problems in the relations with Aliyev, but everything will fall into place. In Ukraine, we are fighting not so much for territories as for people's rights. Every country, and Ukraine, has the right to security, but not at our expense. I have never ruled out the possibility of meeting with, let's say, the current head of the administration, Zelensky. Trump asked me to do that. Does it make sense? In the end, if he's ready, let him come to Moscow. According to the Ukrainian media and people, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. If common sense prevents, it is possible to agree on acceptance of the way to end this conflict. But if we fail, we will solve all tasks by armed means. All groups are successfully advancing in all directions in Ukraine, and the Ukrainian armed forces are not capable of conducting large-scale offensive. That's basically the Putin's speech in a nutshell. And now I would like to address all the lies that I have found in his speech. Lie number one is about Azerbaijani President Aliyev. We exchanged a few words with Aliyev. There are problems in relations with Azerbaijan, but everything will fall into place. Also, Putin said that he exchanged a few words. Well, this is what happened. This is Aliyev right there by the wall, smiling. And this is Putin coming in. Now look what happens. They shake hands, barely looking at each other. Right there. And Aliyev is smiling because he just continues smiling because he had just, a funny exchange with someone. And they don't even look at each other. Look. Boom. Boom. Putin started looking at the women, talking to women. Okay? So that's a lie. And everyone, it's not secret information. Everyone saw his exchange with Aliyev. So why did Putin have to lie about that? Now, lie number two. There are problems in relations with Azerbaijan, but everything will fall into place. Putin knows that the problems are so big they will not fall into place, at least with him, the president. But he states otherwise. Now, the Chinese initiative on global governance is very timely. What Chinese initiative on global governance? What are you talking about, Vladimir? That's lie number three. The contours of a multipolar world have already taken shape. That's lie number four. Moving to another lie. In Ukraine, that's probably the biggest lie. In Ukraine, we're fighting not so much for territories as for people's rights. Where do I even start? Oh my God. I don't know, folks. Do I have to explain you this phrase? In Ukraine, we're fighting not so much for territories, but for people's rights. Russian troops have invaded Ukraine, annexed so many lands, territories of Ukraine, and they're doing it to protect people's rights. Every country, and Ukraine, has a right to security, but not at our expense. That's another lie. Ukraine never did anything to beef up its security and safety at Russia's expense. If anyone knows of what Ukraine did, anyone thinks I'm mistaken, let me know, because I don't know anything that Ukraine did. It wanted to become part of NATO. Well, you know what? Finland just become part of NATO. Sweden just become part of NATO. Turkey has been a part of NATO for 50 years now? No problem. No one really thinks that Putin doesn't think that's a threat to security of Russia. Ukraine, big threat to security. So that's another lie. I never ruled out the possibility of meeting, let's say, the current head of the administration, Zelensky. Well, he's not current head of the administration. He's democratically elected president of Ukraine. He actually beat the last president in a very fair fight. More lies. But if we fail to reach a peace agreement, fail to negotiate, we will solve all tasks by armed means. You know what? That's a lie. Russia has been trying to solve everything that they want to solve, to take Ukrainian lands, to take Kiev, to retake Kherson by armed means, and they have been failing miserably. So, no. Russia will not solve all tasks by armed means. All groups are successfully advancing in all directions. That's another lie. Russia failed summer offensive in Ukraine. Russia has put lots of resources, human resources, lots of finances, lots of weapons into this offensive, and has only captured around 360 square kilometers of Ukrainian land. That's a failure compared to what Russia has put into reaching that. And the Ukrainian armed forces are not capable of conducting large-scale offensives. That's another lie. Ukrainian armed forces proved that they are capable by advancing on Kherson and kicking the Russians out of Kherson, by advancing on Kharkov and kicking Russians out of Kharkov suburbs. Just two examples. They are very capable of conducting large-scale offensives. At the end, I want to show you a video from an economic forum in Russia, in Vladivostok. It's happening now, and this video is one day long, and I would like to translate this couple minutes. I'd like to translate from Russian into English. I am a Muscovite. I, like everyone else, I go to food stores and I buy food. I do that often. I am the person who looks at prices, the food prices. I don't understand much about the economy. And then sometimes I go to different platforms. I watch videos, and sometimes I go to that platform that is being slowed down. She means YouTube in Russia, and I find some economists speaking there. And on YouTube, the economists are telling me that everything is not that great about Russian economy. Everything is going to hell, and the budget is in deficit. And then I go to Russian video hosting platforms with Russian economists, and not the opposite. They're saying that everything is great, everything was circumventing the sanctions, we're growing, and the future is bright. Breakthroughs, are ahead of us, and we will win. That's what Russian-based economists are saying. And I have a question. Who do I trust? And she looks at Putin. Vladimir Vladimirovich, who do I trust? She asks him. Who do I trust? Which economists? The ones who are saying everything is bad, or the ones who are saying everything is good and will be better? Look at Putin. He's not very comfortable about answering this question. I don't know if it was part of the plan to ask him that, but he's clearly uncomfortable. And every time, it doesn't happen often, and every time he's uncomfortable, it shows. Yeah, he starts talking, but he needs to press a button. And this is perfect. This is why I wanted to show you this video. He just said the following. I have answered such questions many times. Trust nobody. Or literally, he said, you cannot trust anyone. Use your own experience and watch the opinions, not those who sit in the internet and tell their opinions, but the professionals, the experts. I'm not going to say anything revolutionary to you. Look how uncomfortable he feels. He's out of his own plate. Oh, there are different opinions. If we're talking about if we listen to experts, they have different opinions. And the question you asked, it's not a very simple question. It looks simple, but it's not. Let's talk about prices. Prices, are growing, and that's inflation. The central bank is fighting inflation and trying to lower it, to lower inflation to the old numbers of no more than 4 or 5%. But this, we need to raise a high interest rate for that. And then the high interest rate that central bank sets to fight inflation, it creates anger at those people who are sitting right here in this room right now, and they're saying it's impossible to do business with high interest rate. And then they say we need to lower the interest rate. And then the prices go up. The only thing I can tell you, and I think he's being honest right here, right now at this segment. I would like to assure you, he says, that all financial institutions, Russian Central Bank, the Ministry of Finance, and they are conducting themselves very professionally, always. Well, how about that? I wanted to show you this segment, this video, for two reasons. First reason is Vladimir Putin kind of showed a little bit of who he really is in the beginning, and I want you to show this. So the lady is asking this question. She's asking like she should understand much about the economy. She asks Putin a very uncomfortable, very direct question. He understands where she's going to, okay, and then he's uncomfortable. Question is simple. Who do I trust? Which economists? Again, look at how uncomfortable he is. He's not ready to answer it. He says, I've answered this question many times. You cannot trust anyone. And I think this is how Putin is. He sincerely believes that he cannot trust anyone. You know, there is no trust in his world. And the answer is absolutely absurd because there are two schools of economists, and one of them is right. So you can trust one school. It's either or type of question. And he says you can't trust anyone. He's an old KGB agent who trusts no one. Yeah, and then he starts telling about how one should rely on her own experience, you know, listen to the experts and so forth. It's all right. And the second part, I would like to pay your attention to the very end, where Vladimir Putin cannot answer this question. It's a very simple question. Who do I trust? The economists on YouTube who are saying things are dark, or the economists in Russia who are saying everything is great, we're nearing breakthroughs and things like that. And you see people kind of laughing here at the question. Anyway, very simple. He cannot answer because he has nothing to answer. Okay? The answer is obvious. Everything's going to hell. You can't fool that lady because she goes food shopping, and that's what she says. She sees the prices. He's mumbling. All he can say that everyone is doing a wonderful job, professional job inside the Russian government, and that's it. Very professional. Everyone is professional. We are living in the state of high professionals in Russia. Everyone is professional. The police, the KGB, the central bank, the Ministry of Finance, and everything great. Everything's hunky-dory. Now, friends, I wanted to tell you about Putin's speech, and I wanted to show you all this and explain the truth, because I don't like when people lie. And when they lie, I always try to put them on the spot. And then I just try to do that. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you soon. Carthago delenda est.